put a comment on Twitter one day where I was like, to me, the closest analog, if I'm using that word correctly, to strength and conditioning is comedy. Like, every comedian thinks every other comedian sucks. And this was you were professional. Is there such a thing really as a professional comedian?
Yeah, if you make a living doing it.
There you go, perfect. Yeah, I know I'm fucking with you. But I want to hear his take on this, because strength and conditioning is like that. Every strength coach, and of course there's some embellishment there, but for the most part, clicks, combativeness, controversy, what parallels have you seen over the course of being a professional comedian and now owning, successful business?
I think perhaps it's beyond both professions, both comedian and coach, the human capacity to cannibalize each other out of sort of insecurities, to not let other people claim space and territory. That I think that extends far beyond our current history.
But then why is it amplified?
It's amplified because you're claiming territories and value. So there's a lot of aspects to that. For us, it was an interesting, us meaning this gym. We've got our full-time coaches here right now, and all of them are exceptional coaches. They've been doing the thing for a long time. But the process of unifying that group was very painful, because the CrossFit community at one point, which is how this particular facility started, was at one point that groomed together quite organically. There was a sort of unified bad guy, and that was the workout. Over time, that sort of populated so that there was multiple gyms, and then territorialism started to overtake that. So then coaches within that started to sort of subconsciously claim space, and then get defensive or
tribal
offensive,
behavior.
Tribal behaviors started to come into play, and then you wound up being much more isolated experientially. And we certainly have gone through being open 15 years. We've certainly seen many waves of that. And for me personally, growing up with the family, my mom was a swimming Hall of Fame coach and around Olympians and stuff. And it was just as catty with Olympic level coaches growing up. As I retrospectively think about it, as you're kind of talking about what you do, even Olympic coaches trying to claim territory over one another. So to me, there's tremendous parallels, and you have a art, you have a profession, you have an expression, and somebody else claiming some of that territory can be perceived as a
scarce resources.
Scarce resources,
right?
When in existence, I just think about this is a city like Los Angeles itself. If you extend it out, there's 20 million people within the surrounding counties. It's absurd, mathematically. But you don't perceive that.
But when you think of it, who's got a dry erase marker? Does anybody have that? And then I want to, so I'm all of 5'8", so I'll just be like, So if we look at this, just because I don't want to lose train of thought, when we're talking about what skills we feel like we'd all be better off being taught, because clearly the ones that we're taught as it exists today isn't enough. We all are in agreement with that, right? Sets and reps and training techniques and tactics are awesome, but obviously they only get us so far. So we have one, and excuse my handwriting, that just is what it is, networking, and we're going to build into that some more. And then think about what Kenny said, just how do you expand the pie? Because I have an assertion, and I'm working on this, it's a work in progress, but I think coaching is three things. And hear me out. Coaching, one, is improv. You got to react in the moment. You can have plans and whatever, that's fine, and you should, but you're going to have to, there's give and take, right? The other one is game theory. Now, when you look at what game theory means, it's decision making under uncertainty. Again, no matter how well programmed you are and how well organized you are, there's going to be a lot of decision making, right? Somebody contests something that you're doing, or you don't have logistically what you need, and there's always something that you've got to adapt off of. The last one, believe it or not, I think is persuasion. I used to say communication or social science, but I think coaching is really, that last part is about persuasion in a good way. You're trying to, help other people understand why they need to do something that's good for them. Could you say it's teaching? Sure. We could say improv, game theory, and pedagogy, but I think that a lot of it is persuasion. We have to get people to do things that inherently some of them might not really like to do. But when we look at expanding the pie, that is a part of game theory. There actually is a game called the shrinking pie game, right? And it's saying there's only limited pieces of pie, and there's people that obviously want to eat it, and it's like an ice cream pie, so it's melting. And it's melting because most people are bickering about the fucking pie and who's gonna eat it and who gets what and whatever. Expand the pie, like go buy another one. So like what I think is missing is entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? If we look at how can we expand the pie, like how can we really, what are skills that we tend to be lacking as entrepreneurs? Like self-awareness. Self-awareness is a critical thing in everything, right? Like if you ask me today about the only thing I'm sure about is that in regards to coaching is that self-awareness is probably the most important trait. Anybody agree? Like by and large, self-awareness is like, if you can't have that, you can't communicate, you can't teach, you're not gonna be able to look at it, and you don't know your values. But we look at entrepreneurship, like, okay, we have self-awareness in that. Now, can you expand on that? What does that mean in regards to the context of entrepreneurship?
Knowing what you offer and bring to the table, like you were saying, you have the pie, but there's so many pies. Everybody here has something that they have to offer. Everyone's got something that they know. You have something I don't know, and we can all learn from each other. So being able to expand that and understand that what you have doesn't mean that I don't have. So being able to take that and separate the two.
But think about it in this context, right? Had to shut down a gym, had to lay people off, right? Now as an option, and other than Equinox, what's the other option?
Expanding my online presence.
Expand online presence, that's fine, right? Like there's no bad ideas in this, and that's why, so how can self-awareness, how does that help his online presence? How does that help his marketing?
Well, I think what she was saying exactly is you have to figure out exactly what you want and go for it. I know it sounds very simple, it sounds easy to do that, but it's something that I've been going through myself in the past year. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I've been training, personal training for the past 8 years now, my own business, and it's been great, very, very fortunate for the clients that I have. There's no passion. I love helping people. And I just started thinking. I started volunteering at high school, and the drive and the smiles that I got, and just the energy was just so different. I was like, this is what I could be doing. And it was volunteering, yeah, it was no money, and it was an awful experience because the organization was not there. Now I'm going out on my own. I've contacted different locations that are like a batting cage. I've talked to different high schools. I've talked to different people over here, and just start marketing, getting out there. And it's like, man, my world has expanded so much from talking and networking. I've reached out to 30 different coaches, different nutritionists, diets, chiropractics. I've met with them, I've had coffee, and like the world has expanded so much, and it's cleared up my mind to understand what exactly I'm going to offer and how it can correlate with what other people are offering at the same time. So I know it's a lot, but if you really dig down and think about what it is that you want, and what's here, and what drives it, that's going to help you understand like where can I go from here.
But she's got a good point. Like I had an identity crisis when I started to do stuff with Art of Coaching for a while, because I took a lot of pride working for my previous employer, talking about agility, programming. Like I liked being that guy, a program design nerd. I ran the intern education. It was a way that like when I first started with that company, I could earn some extra clout or privileges and also get practice speaking. Somebody had to do intern education. Nobody wanted to do it. I'm like, I'll do it. You know, it's a way for me to kind of continue to I'm really obsessed in terms of self-awareness, figuring out what I really know. And I do that by being my own like biggest self-critic. If you ask me, other than trying to expand the pie for other coaches and help them avoid mistakes that I made and still make, why I'm more visible and put myself out there today is I look at it this way. It'll save me a lot of time if I end up realizing like, you know what, I don't know shit about any of this. I'm awful at this. I need to pick another career. That's very evident. And that sounds silly, but I've always been very big on trying to prove myself a fraud first and foremost. Because one, it allows you to learn like, what are my real gaps? What are my weakest points? You know, and there's a brutal truth to it. You know, and then after that, it's like, where should I spend the majority of my time? That's how you solve information overload. What's your biggest pain point? But not to get too off topic, when we think of entrepreneurship and self-awareness, one thing I go with that when I was trying to figure out like, all right, now I'm not just going to be talking about agility. Now I'm not just going to be talking about program design. When I first wrote Conscious Coaching, I had like 8 emails and messages of people being like, oh, so like you're not talking about training anymore? Training's not important? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like if I go eat Thai food one night, I can still like Mexican. Like I don't understand why there's this dichotomy. What I found is like, all right, what am I passionate about? I think we're all passionate about training and the human like performance side, the training piece. But like, what's my big purpose? Well, I started to see commonalities. Well, I was hospitalized when I was young. That hospital was a fairly traumatic experience because there were all these intelligent, probably overeducated people that couldn't communicate and connect. So I didn't see it probably until a couple years ago, but that really set my path. the training side helped me get back to a physical state of health, but communication was always where I was gonna take this. Why? Because there's a shit ton of people that don't know how to communicate and connect. So I don't like it when people say follow your passion. I kind of think that's bullshit. I think that it's more important to kind of find your purpose, especially when you're in a rut. And trust me, I've been in a rut. When I left LA, and this guy will verify it, I almost had no money. I was personal training a lot of Gen Pop again, doing one-on-one, which I by no means think I'm too good for, but I had never done probably since I personal trained to start getting in the field. It was like the fucking Twilight Zone. Because people online, people would be like, oh, like they think that because I had followers or whatever, that I was living some cush life. I was waking up at 5 a.m. to train a crazy lawyer, and then like coming back at 8 p.m. to train the guy that let me use a space. He was like, you can't have more than one person at a time. So I'm telling NFL guys like, hey, I got to train you one-on-one, and they're like, what? And I'm like, by the way, you can't slam weights or med balls anymore. And I'd just go home and I'd look at my wife and I'd be like, I don't know what is happening. But I started looking like, where do I need to go with this? Because I have a passion for training, but the bigger purpose is what's missing. Well, you look around, and there's a lot of shit that teaches us what to coach, not a whole lot that teaches us how to coach. And more so, you have a lot of people like, how to coach is not something that's dependent on age or experience level. Like we're gonna run workshops with Art of Coaching where we're completely comfortable mixing somebody that has had 40 years in the game and maybe won 2 Super Bowls or NBA finals with a newbie personal trainer. And the fact is they're gonna have to self-evaluate and peer evaluate each other interacting in groups. And it really doesn't matter if the senior level coach thinks this person's full of shit and you have no right to evaluate me, because what are we all at the mercy of ultimately at the end of the day? Other people's perceptions. Whether you like it or not, you're at the mercy of other people's perceptions. It's a big lie we're told. There's 2 lies we're told as it pertains to communication. Is one, treat everybody how you want to be treated. That's bullshit. You treat everybody how they want to be treated. Not everybody wants to be treated the same, right? There's some people that want to be loved tenderly. There's some people that like S&M. That's a different ball game altogether, okay? The other one, and I lost my train of thought with that ridiculous example. Oh, no, it does matter what people think of you. It does. Now, should you be at the mercy of that? Should you adapt everything of who you are and what you believe in? No, and that's why, who said it's so important to know your values, right? Like, you can adapt the message without curtailing your values, but if you're stuck, you're like, all right, I need to learn more about this. I got to extend the pie, whether that's online presence or whatever. Self-awareness, well, what could I even bring if you were going the online training route that isn't already out there, right? We know that there's a shit ton of platforms out there. I'll be transparent. I do online training, and I can charge a premium for it because you know what people still want? They want interaction. I get on calls regularly with these people, Zoom calls, and they really want to see a face. And they want somebody to walk them through their program. And there's some of these places that will just charge, it's like $10 a month or whatever, and they just shoot copy and paste programs. Well, I know I'm pretty good at programming, and I would imagine you are too. So I'm like, listen, man, I'm gonna write, like, yeah, this is more expensive. It's, $150 a month, $200 a month, or whatever. But I'm actually writing these day to day, and I'm guiding you through it, and I'm commenting on it every day and whatever. Like, my point is can you bring a bespoke experience to that? Think of hotels. There's Ritz-Carltons, there's Marriott's, there's all this, and shit, Airbnb still was able to make a dent in the game. Why? Because they realized it wasn't just a bed people were after. People were after experience, right? Like, what's the experience? What's a shared community there? And then don't think about whether you like it or not when you're in tough times. There's a lot of shit you're just gonna have to eat, and you know that. But I think that's hard for many of us because we still think we have to enjoy every aspect of it. Do you enjoy every aspect of training? No, there's overreaching, there's overtraining, there's elements of strain that even if you're an absolute nerd at that stuff like we are, you don't like. Anybody have a day where you don't want to fucking train? Right, and we do this for a living. So there's your passion and purpose right there. Well, I don't really want to train today, but my ass better go move and do something. That's what leads to problem solving. Once we kind of get through the muck of how do I expand the pie, what do I really want to do, values, whatever, what's my purpose versus what's my passion, now what problem am I trying to solve? And if you can't figure that out in one word, one sentence, and one paragraph, you're usually not at the right fucking solution. And it may take a couple iterations. You may have to screw it up. I think I changed company names 3 times. But like my point is you'll go through a lot of iterations. I rewrote Conscious Coaching 6 or 7 times. At first it read like some kind of thesis. And my editor was like, hey, do you want anybody to read this? But I was writing it for people like, that were ready to argue about every little point in nomenclature. And it still didn't even matter. I get people that like string me up for using the term buy-in instead of trust. So the nice thing is the pressure's off you because no matter what you do, there's some asshole that's gonna think you're wrong, but you just gotta think, am I moving the needle there some way, shape, or form? Does this make sense? I want you to share what you had, because we were talking about networking and entrepreneurship. What did you want to add?
Build off of networking.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to do it. Reach out. Don't be rude about it. But I've noticed this past year I've had to travel quite a bit for work, and so as I mentioned to you before, like I was in Canada and I reached out to Matt Jordan and the Calgary Flames strength coaches, and I got to meet all of them. They were all very welcoming. So the biggest thing is like every time I try to go somewhere, I try to network with people and meet them, not just for networking, but also because I like learning from other people.
Yeah.
And so my biggest thing is like just try it, because everybody's not always gonna say yes, but so far like most people are really welcoming. It's just.
I think to that point, I want to bring Brianna into this discussion, because like you were somebody that I networked with, or I like the term connecting, like they're the same two parts of the same coin, but like she did a phenomenal job, and I think she does one of the best jobs at managing an online presence. Like I remember I went to her website, and this was during a time where I was really struggling creating some kind of personal barriers, because I was getting people, and I'm sure many of you do this as well, you get people that reach out through DM and they want advice, and then email they want advice, and then friends text you and they want a program. And as much as we love helping people, like it starts to feel like there's just this encroachment, and it's really hard to say no. I know I suck at saying no. Like I almost am apologetic if I say no to somebody, because I don't want to feel like I let them down. But I looked at Brianna's site, and I don't remember how I got there, but like it was amazing that she just had a very simple page up, one that in full transparency I mimicked. And it was like, hey, for a 30-minute call, it's this much. For a 60-minute call, it's this much. And there was like no apology there. And it was almost like I needed to see that to get permission to feel like it was okay to charge for my time. Has anybody felt like that? Like where you almost feel wrong for charging for your time? I mean, if you haven't, this isn't an agree with Brett seminar. Say no, but like I know like I needed that. Has anybody else felt like that? But I saw that, and I got her on the phone, and like we talked about a lot of things, but like what got you to that point? How did you manage being okay with that and putting yourself, and you deal with a lot of criticism, sharing aspects of your personal life with your professional brand too. Can you speak on that a little?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot to say. I had to put up some boundaries in place. Like I'm a mom of 2 little kids, and I don't have time to, like I had to make sure that if I'm running a successful business and I'm trying to pursue entrepreneurship, it needs to complement the rest of my life and not just be my life. And I think the strength and conditioning industry is very much like in this bubble of, well, I'm going to work in collegiate athletics, I'm going to work in high school athletics, I'm going to work with general population personal training, and there's not a whole lot of like creativity outside of that. And so I had to make sure that my time was going to be worth it, and then set up different like revenue streams that would support the life that I was trying to cultivate. And it's a total hot mess. It's not like a perfect system at all, but I needed something that if I was going to really pivot in that direction, and like my personal life, it really helped build the business too, and sharing about that. But I think that was important for me, was to set those boundaries and say that my time is valuable, my knowledge is valuable, and what I'm trying to create is valuable. And if people see that, then I want to work with them and I want to connect them. And then expanding the pie by then coaching coaches and people that actually want to, who see the value in that. Like you all understand the value in continuing education, and it's almost an easier sell than just trying to work with, trying to get like a new mom to want to work with you. She's not really willing to invest all the time. So then it's knowing like what options do you have available to reach more people, or at least give yourself more options when trying to build revenue and manage time.
So within that, I think that you mentioned in your family is important in the personal life, because like as coaches, our personal life is super blended. I mean, it's heavily enmeshed with our professional life, no matter what. Like I knew that even talking about where I failed at first doing Bartholomew strength, just grabbing what I could, that immediately gave me a bad taste in my mouth, because I didn't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the collective, right? Art of like strength and conditioning. So that's the bridge, and then art of coaching. But I think like the piece there is what we forget is we're so busy. One of our main obstacles and sources of stress is our relationships with other coaches. Who brought that up?